Thank you, Ruplata ma'am. Uh, Thank you for welcoming audience. So it's my pleasure this evening to introduce our resource person for the day. I'm proud to introduce Dr. Neerav Vyas, who is the in-charge director and associate professor, Swaminarayan Institute of Management, Porbandar, Gujarat. So before that, his academic before this he had his academic tenure at RK University, Rajkot, Gujarat, as an assistant professor in the School of Management. He also worked as an assistant professor in JV Institute of Management Studies, Jamnagar, Gujarat. He has a corporate experience working with companies like City Financials Limited and GE Money Limited. Academically, he has presented papers in various reputed journals. He has a PhD in marketing, specializing in the area of consumer behavior from RK University, Gujarat. He has a diploma in public speaking from the University of New South Wales, Australia. He has an MBA in HRM from IGNO, postgraduate diploma in HRM from IGNO, postgraduate diploma in marketing from Tolani Institute of Management Studies, and BCom from Saurashtra University. He is an ex-com member and coach at International Toastmasters Club. He is a member of the Rajkot Management Association. His hobbies include playing the piano and the flute. Uh, and our association goes back to Jan 2019 when Sir had presented his paper as a delegate at the SSMRB International Conference, and we are very happy to have connected with him and Sir for accepting this invite. Thank you so much, Sir, and over to you, Sir.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are.
All right, all right.
Sir, just before we start the presentation, participants, please ensure the screen that Sir is presenting, the Sir screen, please, all of you pin on that particular, if you can see here, the way I'm doing it, if you can look at my screen, there's something called pin to screen. If you could just click on that, you'll be able to see only Sir's screen and no other participants, there'll be no other distractions, basically. So if you can see here, if you can observe my screen, I'm able to see only Sir's screen now. Please ensure whether I'm not sure how it works in mobile, but you could use the pin to screen option. Okay, sir. As I said, sometimes if there's any technical glitch, I'll be telling it. Probably we may just have to restart it a couple of times just to ensure that the participants are benefited.
Sure.
Thank you, sir. Over to you. I'll just stop sharing.
All right. Good evening, everybody. I am again confirming. Am I audible, Gokul sir?
Yes, sir. You are. You are audible, sir. We can hear you.
Okay. So first of all, I welcome all the participants for investing their time and to come here to join this online webinar or a workshop, whatever we call it. For a speaker who is not very well known, and still you have joined in heaps and bounds and in a lot of numbers. So I'm very thankful, first of all, to the participants who have come. Second, I want to thank Professor Gokul for introducing me with such great laurels and accolades. Gokul sir, you are such a great orator that when you were giving my introduction, I was asking myself, who is this guy he is talking about, you know?
Thank you, sir. I'm humble.
So, and I also thank Professor Umesh Salma and Gokul sir for wonderfully coordinating this event since last 2 days, and they have been preparing for this event since so many days. So, you guys are doing a very good job in among all this lockdown and everything, but you are pulling out a good show. Now, webinars, online classes, online teaching, this is creating a lot of buzz for all wrong reasons these days. And for that, the point is, let's have a very casual talk rather than a very formal FDP or a formal, speech, so that we can open up, and I'll be taking your questions at the end of the session. Now, the topic for today is, reskilling and retraining the teachers. Now, what is the difference between these two words? Reskilling and retraining. A lot of people would say that these two are very similar words, they are very synonymous to each other, and some others might have a difference of opinion. Have a very close resemblance to each other, but there lies a difference between these two. Reskilling basically is a larger has a larger meaning compared to retraining, and that's why we have, and I'm happy that these people have kept that word ahead of retraining. Reskilling basically means learning, unlearning, and relearning. This is something that we will be discussing in the session today. How to learn, then to unlearn whatever you have learned, and then to relearn new things. Reskilling nowadays in Western countries, they are also called as upskills or upskilling. And just wait a moment, I have a screen. Gopal sir, I'm getting some complaints that the screen is not visible. Is it visible, sir?
Yes, sir. We can see you. No, the screen is not visible. We can only see you actually.
Okay,
So,
but I am sharing it. Let me try it again. Okay.
yes, sir.
Yeah. Just hold on. Bear with me for a while.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir. Participants, in the meanwhile, okay, they say it's visible. I mean, basically, sir is not referring to the video. He's referring to his yeah.
Is it now visible? The
1 minute, sir. Let's give a minute. It says you're presenting.
Sir, it is visible. It is visible. Okay. You can carry on, sir. You can carry on.
Okay.
The screen reads as flipped classroom, reskilling, and retraining teachers. Is it?
Yes.
Is it the same screen?
Perfect.
Yeah, please carry on. Please carry on.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. All right, so the point is reskilling is a larger word compared to retraining. Reskilling nowadays in Harvard Business School or in some other King's College London, they call it as upskill workshops. Upskill workshops basically means reskilling your teachers how to take sessions, how to involve with the students, and how to teach them basically. We call it reskilling, so one and the same thing. Retraining basically will refer to a lot of activities that we do in the class rather than preparing for the class. For preparing for the class, you need skills, and for delivering a proper class, you would need a lot of training. Now, both the skills and trainings nowadays have changed a lot. And that's why I've given this this presentation a topic of the flipped classroom. The classroom actually has flipped. How it has flipped? See, in earlier days when I used to study, the classroom environment was rather very formal. It used to be rather very formal. There used to be a lot of distance between the faculties and the students, and the students had a hesitant. They used to be very hesitant in talking to the faculty concerned. Nowadays, because of a lot of technology coming up, a lot of free mindset happening in the society, which is good, rather the distance have been reduced. And in many cases, you know, if as a teacher you are not updated, your students end up teaching you in the class, and that's a fact, and there is nothing wrong in it. You know, if you need to go along with the society, how the society is moving actually. And that's why I've called it as a flipped classroom. The onus of a good lecture now is more on a faculty rather than the students being sitting in the benches and, you know, finger on your lips. Gone are those days. Now the teacher has to work hard more than the student, because the student is generally on the receiving end. You are the people, we are the people basically who are responsible to deliver, to plan first of all, then to deliver a lecture which fits into the objective of that particular session. And that's why the onus or the responsibility is on the teachers. And that is what we are going to talk about. But before moving into all those theories and all those, you know, boring stuff, I want to start this session by saying that we are here to break certain myths. Okay? Myth number one that we want to break today is that in a workshop or in an FDP, the speaker is generally very boring person. That's a myth, and we are going to break it today. I'm not at all boring, and I would like to have a lot of interaction if Gokul sir permits. The second myth that we want to break today is online classes is a pain for a teacher as well as pain for a student. That is again a myth. We will break it, how it is not a pain and how online classes can be really interesting for a teacher as well as for a student. And the third myth that I want to break today is online classes require a lot of formal approach. No, it doesn't require a lot of formal approach. You just have to worry about your content, nothing else. Now, how we will break this myth? At the end of the session, we all will be very clear about why online classes is not so boring. Now, before we move again ahead, I want to ask a question. How many of you are fond of movies? And I would take Gokul sir's answer as a reflection of everybody's answer. So, Gokul sir, are you very fond of movies, web series? Hello? Anyone can answer, unmute oneself and you can answer. My question is, how many of
Of course, sir, everybody loves.
we love movies?
Yeah, we too love movies.
So much of our hard-earned money just to see Salman Khan dancing on a stupid song on the 70 screen, isn't it? We do love it. We yesterday itself, one of my friend was telling me that, oh, I can't wait for 31st July, and I said, why? Is it your salary day? And he said, no. 31st July on Netflix, there is a new series which is getting released of Nawazuddin Siddiqui, and I'm waiting for that series. This is how, and this is the, you know, for the movies in us. Now I want to ask another question. Movie or a web series, is it a one-way communication or a two-way communication? Anyone can answer. Just one person can unmute.
Of course, sir, it is one-way communication.
One way?
It's a one-way communication?
Of course, it is one-way communication, sir.
Yes, it is a one.
Yes, only they came to communicate and we listen.
They communicate and we listen, and that also they communicate what they want to communicate. Isn't it? Still we find it interesting. Now, if we find that thing interesting, then we need to ask ourselves a question that our online classes are generally a two-way communication. Generally, you know, okay, you can mute your students, but at the end of the session, you are always going to ask them their doubts. They are always free to ask you anything that they want to ask you, isn't it? So if my point is, if that one-way communication is very interesting and people spend for going to the theater and watching that movie, why can't our online classes, which are two-way communication, can be of the same interest to ourselves as well as to the students? Now, the reason why these movies are interesting is because of 2-3 very important reasons. Number one, the content. A movie is a good movie which is having a good content in it. Similarly, an online class will be an interesting class if you have a good. Around the bushes, nobody is going to come and invest their money for it or invest their time. Second is the star power of the movie. You know, we always say, oh, it's a Shah Rukh Khan's movie, or it's a Rajni Khan's movie, or it's a Salman Khan's movie. We never say that it's this director's movie or this production house movie. The name of the director or the name of the production house, even if it is a well-known production house, it always comes after the actor or the actress in that case. The power, the star power. Now that star power basically means the amount of space that particular star occupies in your brain. That is the star power. All right. So that friend of mine, which I said was waiting for Nawazuddin Siddiqui's web series to get released, is a fan of Nawazuddin Siddiqui. Why is he a fan of Nawazuddin Siddiqui? Because he has occupied a small amount of his brain space. And that is where we teachers lack. We do not occupy a space in the brains of our students, most of us. Now, how can we do that? That is what this session is all about. How can we occupy, how can we be a rock star in the brains of our students? Right? So that is what we are going to talk about. This is a small summary of this entire session. And now we will move further. Now, I'll throw you certain facts about online education. It's the second largest internet subscriber base in the world, and this is by the Department of Telecom, Indian Department of Telecom report 2019, and we are soon going to be the number one in the internet subscriber base, having the largest internet subscriber base in the world. So that is something that we should all be very proud of, but this is something which we should not be proud of. The connectivity and signal strength is still an issue in India. We are the 27th country in the world in terms of signal strength and bandwidth. Now, these are some problematic area which the government is actually working upon. But the fact which is really disturbing is this one. According to an IIM Ahmedabad survey, recent survey by 2 of their students, the overall active participation and interest level in an online class is just 3.27%. Now, could you believe this? Could you believe this? Because since the lockdown has been announced, every day I get 3 messages for a webinar. That we are having this webinar, we are having that webinar. Since last 3 months. All right. And instead of that, the interest level and the active participation is only 3.27%. I hope we are very clear about what is an active participation. You know, like if I start with my own in this on FDP, if somebody just logs in to the FDP and goes away for a tea and then comes, that we would not count as an active participation. So this is a problem. And the other problem is the content depth, explanation and example relevance is no more than 6% as compared to offline teaching. Again, this is the fact from the same survey which was done by Ms. Ritika Sabha and Mrityunjay Sharani. They both are the scholars from IIM Ahmedabad, the fellowship scholars from IIM Ahmedabad. Now they have said that the teacher who is explaining an online class, his examples, the relevance of that example to the subject that he is teaching, his explanation and his content is, if we compare it with the physical teaching, it is only 6% what he delivers in an online teaching. Now this is something that we can improve, because if we as a teacher cannot give proper content to our students, we take online teaching so lightly कि हाँ ठीक है अभी 45 minutes है, we can go on with laptop and we'll speak whatever we want to speak. Then naturally, if my content is so less, then naturally the active participation, even this 3.27% is very high, is what I feel is. So these are the facts that we need to start our discussion with. Now, as I said, in order to improve our content, in order to improve our explanation and our example relevance, which will ultimately improve the active participation, we need to do this thing. And this is a very simple strategy. And this is not a Western strategy. This is a very Vedic strategy. In our Veds, it is always said, something, whatever you have learned, it occupies a certain amount of your memory space in your brain. Now, if a person since his birth starts learning things, the first thing that we learn is the basic things. When we are born, we generally start learning what is hunger, what is pain, then who is mama, who is papa. These are the first things that we learn as kids. Then a kid will start learning to walk. Then from walking, from crawling to walking, and from walking to running. So we always upskill ourselves and we keep learning things. Then we go to school, we go to graduations, we learn a lot of things. Then we start doing a job, and through our experiences every day we learn things. And everything that we learn keeps occupying our brain space. So it is, consider your brain as a hard disk. So no matter how large a hard disk is, sometimes you need to clean the that hard disk in order to again increase your memory. But here we don't do it. We always stay attached to our older things that we have learned, our older beliefs that we have created in our minds, and then we refuse to let it go because we have learned it the hard way. So we refuse to let it go, and that makes our brain very full, and then the brain refuses to accept new ideas. Then the brain refuses, saying that, oh, now this is not my cup of tea, I cannot learn all these things, I cannot adapt to all these changes. But the point is, if you cannot adapt to new changes, sooner or later you are going to get forgotten. The only thing which allows you to have a perpetual identity is the thing, or is the skill, which is called as adaptiveness. We need to adapt to the changes which is happening. And in order to adapt to the changes that are happening, we need to free certain space of things that we have learned, which no longer has any relevance in today's world. We need to forget it. And we need to use that free space to learn new things, new skills, and then to freeze those new skills in our brains. This simple technique is called as learning, unlearning, and relearning. This is exactly happening in schools these days, that teachers are refusing to take online sessions, saying that my students are not very attentive, but the real reason is he himself doesn't want to take an online class, because he himself is not very conversant with the technology. He doesn't know how to use a Google Meet. That's not a crime if you do not know how to use a Google Meet or a Zoom or whatever platform that you are using. But the crime is refusing to learn that platform. That is a crime, right? So we need to understand that if, as a teacher, and I want to quote a very well-known person over here, Rabindranath Tagore once had said that a teacher, a good definition of a teacher is a person who never stops learning. Because if you stop learning things, you would not be able to give learning to your pupils. You will not be able to give learning to your students. And that is why a teacher should never cease to learn. So in order to not to cease learning, we need to first unlearn the things that we have already learned and which have no relevance in today's world. Now this looks very simple, but it is very difficult. It's a psychological exercise. And how to unlearn things, that is a problem. See, a lot of people say this, that I want to unlearn things, but I cannot let them go. How to unlearn things? There are very simple steps that we can do to unlearn things. I hope I'm not going very fast.
No, sir. The pace is absolutely fine.
All right, fine. So now moving to how to unlearn things. So strategies to learn, we might have heard from our teachers that this is what you do to learn things, this is what you do to learn things. But now we are going to discuss this should be done to unlearn the things. Okay. Now the first thing is begin at the beginning. That means you have to introspect yourself and find out that what are the things that I have studied, what are the things that I have learned which have no relevance today. All right. So I'll give you an example. When I used to study my commerce in 12th standard, there used to come a subject called accountancy, and in accountancy there used to be a chapter which is called as Desi Hisab. Now the people who are joining from Gujarat might know this. It used to be in the Gujarat board's education system. Desi Hisab basically is the accounting system which is followed in Gujarat. It's not a double entry accounting system. So we had a chapter on double entry accounting system. That means the trading account, final account, and balance sheets. And we also had a chapter on Desi Hisab, that how actually the roadside proprietor of a shop is writing an accounts in Gujarat. We used to have a chapter on that, and we learned both this chapter. Okay, so when I did my advanced accountancy in BCom, I was conversant with double entry system as well as the Desi Hisab system. All right, the countryside accounting system. Then after 5-7 years, when I cleared my 12th board, Government of India made it compulsory even for a small little entrepreneur to follow double entry system. All right, the regional accountancy systems were stopped by the government, but that Desi Hisab system is still there in my brain. All right, now is it any fruitful to me, or is it fruitful to my students? No, because now that system is gone, it is past, it is history. Okay, you can always say and boast that I used to study when there used to be the Desi Hisab system. That's okay, you can boast on it. But it is not going to give any fruitful result to you now. All right, so it's an unwanted piece of information that I have it in my brain, and if I want to clear my memory, I need to unlearn that thing. All right, so when somebody is teaching me a new accounting system, I should not say that no, this is wrong. In our Desi Hisab system, we used to put this entry here. No, that's gone. All right, clean it and adapt to the new thing. So begin at the beginning, right? Go to the first knowledge that you had and start scrutinizing every chapter, everything that you have learned maybe 20 years back, and find it out. Is it having a relevance now? Yes, keep it. No, forget it. All right. Second is look for mirrors. Mirrors basically means look for people who can give you feedbacks. A mirror in an organization or a mirror in a society are those people who are going to give you proper feedback. And I'm using the word proper feedback. I'm not using a positive feedback or a negative feedback, because what I feel is feedback is a feedback. You cannot call it positive or negative. But yes, there are people who would always flatter you saying that, oh no, whatever you have done is so nice. That might not be their real sense of feedback, but that is just to please you, maybe because you are a teacher, you are sitting on a good position, they might flatter you saying this. And there would be some people who would always find faults in you, right? Avoid both of them, right? Because a person who always flatters you, you can never trust them, because today he is flattering you. He is actually not flattering you, he is actually flattering the position on which you are sitting. Second is the negative ones. They would demotivate you all the time, right? So at the end of the day, you would say that, oh, I did everything, but still this person is saying I was lacking here, here, and here. Then I should stop doing it, you know. So go to your closest friends, find out, spot the people who are actually interested in your happiness, who are actually interested in your success, and keep taking feedbacks from them. All right. So I have put this in my college system, that whenever a faculty is taking a session, we on CCTV, there is always a recording which goes on. And once in a while, I call them and I give them a constructive feedback that this is what you have done very well. This is the place where you need to have an improvement. Now, some people take it very well. Some people always take it as a bossism, that this person's job is to do this, and they never take it seriously. But the people who take it constructively, they actually improve their knowledge, right? So you need to look for mirrors. You need to find out who are the people who are actually giving you a right feedback. Third is examine your beliefs. See, those people who might have taught subjects like organizational behavior or psychology, they would know that learning happens in two ways. One is called as operant learning, and the second one is called as classical learning. Classical learning basically means the learnings that you get without actually actively learning something. So, for example, when we were born, all of us, we automatically learned the feeling of hunger in our tummies. Nobody has taught us, okay, bhai, if you feel hungry, this is what happens in your tummy. No. Or we haven't studied a textbook saying that if a craving feeling happens in your stomach, that means you are hungry. No. We learn it by ourselves. That is called as classical learning. That never goes out of your brain. But what we are interested in is something called as operant learning. Operant learning means the learning that you take from the external environment, either through reading something or watching something, or maybe your own experience that makes you learn something. Those things are called as operant learnings. Now, operant learnings, after a while, becomes your belief. Are you getting it? Belief is always having a very permanent stamp on your brain. This is something which is my belief. That means this is how my thought process works. And that thought process generally takes the reference of the learning that you have got. So examine your beliefs, whatever beliefs on different things that you might hold in your brain. Examine your belief and find out which belief of yours is actually not rhyming with the external world right now. That means either there is some problem with the external world or there is some problem with your own belief. And 9 out of 10 times it ends up by that there is something wrong with your own belief, not with the external world. All right? Examine your beliefs, find out the belief which does not rhyme with the external world right now, and work on it. Maybe unlearn that belief and learn a new operant way of learn something new operantly and create a new belief. Here I want to give you an example. A lot of you would be fan of Harry Potter. I am a big fan of Harry Potter. The author J.K. Rowling, she wrote this book she got an idea of writing this book by the experiences that she had when she used to narrate bedtime stories to her kids. Basically, it was a bedtime story, fantasy. And she wrote a book. The book got successful, and then she started writing sequences. Now, my niece, who was very young when Harry Potter came, and she became a huge fan of Harry Potter, and she actually started believing that Hogwarts do exist in real. This is how learning can affect your beliefs. Are you getting this point? So that is what I'm talking about. You need to examine your beliefs. Next one is question the relevance of your knowledge. So whatever knowledge that you carry, whatever degrees that you carry, nowadays, knowledge is always defined in India. It is always defined by the degrees that a person holds. Find out the relevance of that degree. So, for example, if I'm a PhD in consumer behavior, and if I'm not after doing my PhD, after earning that degree, I'm not doing anything in the field of consumer behavior which can benefit to the corporate or to the society at a large, that means my knowledge is a completely unproductive knowledge. It's not going to help anybody. All right. A real knowledge is a knowledge which can be turned into wisdom. Otherwise, knowledge is just a piece of paper, nothing else. So you need to question the relevance that if I have a knowledge, is that knowledge fruitful to the society? Is that knowledge fruitful to my students? If we come to nearer stakeholders, if that knowledge is fruitful to my colleagues or anybody, even corporate, yes, then I need to keep that knowledge. No, then I need to unlearn that knowledge. All right. And the last thing that you need to do is ask yourself, is your knowledge actually can be called as wisdom or not? There is a difference between knowledge and wisdom. All right. Here I want to give you an example how there is a difference between knowledge and wisdom. Is a very famous epic of India, Ramayana. In Ramayana, it is a known fact that Ravan was more knowledgeable than anybody else in this entire epic. He was very knowledgeable. He was the creator of the Shiv Tandav. He was the author of the Shiv Tandav. He was very knowledgeable. But what did he do? He abducted somebody's wife. Now that cannot be called as wisdom, isn't it? So if your knowledge cannot be termed as wisdom or cannot be converted as wisdom, then you need to unlearn that knowledge. It will only harm you, and sometimes it can harm the society also. So you need to unlearn it, and you need to relearn something which is actually can be translated as wisdom. So these are the strategies to unlearn things, and this is something which would go on with you for life. It is not a one-time activity that, okay, on one fine Sunday morning, I sat and I thought that, okay, I need to unlearn a lot of things. And I read these 5 points, okay, 50 MB clear. It doesn't work that way. This happens every day. This has to be done regularly. All right. Then you keep learning new things. So this is what we need to do when we actually start taking online classes. We need to unlearn a lot of myths about online classes, and we should never sit taking a lecture in online class thinking right from the beginning that the students will not take active participation. If you sit with that mindset, half of your energy has gone. 50% of your energy is gone, and there is only 50% probability that you would end up giving a very nice, online session. The next thing that we are going to do is, so that this is what, as I said earlier, that the onus of having a very good online class is on the teachers, not on the students. So we should stop blaming the students, because students will always be that way. Students will always be notorious. Students will always try to find a way of not attending the class. That's why they are students. So the responsibility of taking a good online class is on us, not on the students. Now, this is what I was reading. This is not basically my material. Basically, it is in one of the Upanishad, and I was reading. The translation, I have done it in English. It says that learning has 4 different tiers. Okay, the first tier is Yad Shakti, that means the ability to learn. The second is Samaj Shakti, that means the ability to understand. Okay, whatever we have learned, when we apply a logic behind that learning, that becomes understanding. The third is Vichar Shakti, that is ability to think. That means whatever we have understood, now putting it into practice, applying what we have learned, that is ability to think, or Vichar Shakti. And the last one is Kalpana Shakti, that means the ability to imagine. All right. 90% of our times, even in physical classes, the teacher teaches the student maximum to the level of ability to understand. A lot of us have an habit that once we do a sum on the board, or once we give them a concept and we ask them, did you understand? And if 60%, 70% of the class says in a very high tone, yes, sir, and that's it, we have done it. Our job is done. We keep boasting to our friends that a maximum number of students raised their hands when I asked them, did you understand? And everybody said, yes, we understood. We never take pain in thinking beyond, all right? We never ask them, we never put them into situations where they have to apply whatever they have learned and whatever they have understood. And we never give them a platform where they can actually explore the things by imagining. Kalpana Shakti, that means the ability to imagine, is the highest form of knowledge. Believe me, it is the highest form of knowledge. So when Wright brothers came out with the blueprint of an aircraft, there was nothing from where they could take reference. There was no literature review for them because they were doing it for the first time. It was completely on the based on their imagination. All right, and they tried, they failed. They tried, they failed, and that's how the first plane came into the air. The first aircraft, I would not call it as a plane, it was first flying object, came into the air. Now this is called as ability to imagine. And I'm just quoting Wright brothers. I'm not trying to say that Indians do not have an ability to imagine. We in fact have the highest ability to imagine, but for all wrong reasons. Now, as a teacher, be it online or offline, the first skill that we need to learn is how to convert, how to upskill our students from the level of understanding to the level of thinking. All right. Easiest way of doing this is to present them with case studies. And believe me, when I'm saying case studies, a lot of school teachers would always say, oh, our students are too young to explore a case. Case study does not always mean a 30 pages case study of Harvard Business Review or a 50 pages case study of General Electric. We are not talking about that. Give them small cases, which we call as caselets. It is not necessary that it has to be a real situation. You can create a hypothetical case of half a page, 1 page, all right? Present it to them, give them into groups, let them explore. And please keep it as a fun activity. Don't associate that activity with marks until and unless it is compulsory by the university, then it's a different story. But what my experience is, when you tie the incentive of marks, then the students will always work for the marks rather than for the knowledge. So keep it as a fun activity, devote a lecture in an entire week for that only. And make it fun. Fill it with activities, you know. What kind of activities? That would come later in my session. This is how we can develop the ability to think. Ability to imagine, understand cannot be developed by the teacher himself. It needs to have an active participation of the student. So when you develop the ability to think, let's say in 20 people, 5 of those students would always come to you for asking for more. Then you understand those 5 are the right people in whom you can have an ability to imagine. And then start giving them larger cases. Then start giving them real life cases. And and let them flow free. Do not put any boundaries. Do not give them deadlines. Let them do it. Okay. Occasionally you can ask on their progresses, but deadlines actually kills creativity. That is what my personal belief is. So this is how you develop the ability to imagine. This is what we have to do not only in the online classes but also in the physical classes. This is a skill that we need to learn, and we need to do it rigorously so that we get trained on that. Right? I'll give you a small example over here also. In one of my department, that was an MCA department, Master in Computer Applications. We have a project that the students have to prepare a project, and mostly in computer applications they prepare softwares or a mobile app or something like that. One of the student in that department who was not a very good scholar, she used to be an average student, hardly getting first class. She came up with an idea saying that to the HOD of her department, saying that I want to build something called a smart mirror. That means there would be a mirror which we generally use for dressing, and that smart mirror would have a chip. That was her imagination, that would have a chip, and that smart mirror will display everything, right from the weather condition of that day to it would also have the WhatsApp notifications and the mail notifications and etc etc. That was her idea. And the HOD asked her, how would you do this? And she said, sir, I don't have any idea. I don't know. But this is what I feel that this could be very interesting. And the HOD and the student came to the committee, which also has me in it, the Board of Studies. And we said, fine, if the student has this idea, we teamed 2 of the faculties with that student. That student took 2 of her colleagues with her, and the entire team of 6-7 people, they pulled out this smart mirror, and we actually had a prototype in a year's time. It took a year, but we had a prototype, and we have still kept it in our office. So this is the power of imagination. Are you getting it? So when students come out with the most stupid kind of an idea, and we scold them in our class that do what is asked or do what you are supposed to do, don't waste time on all these things, we are actually killing the imagination of that student. Okay, it would not harm us if we just hear or just listen to that idea. Then if we actually find it stupid, we'll reject it. But let them speak, let them come up with ideas. So that is basically we need to train ourselves on. Now coming to what I've done is reskilling and retraining. So first we'll see the steps of reskilling. The first thing that we have to skill ourselves for online classes is we need to plan our classes very properly. Now most of this problem of not planning the classes happens in senior teachers rather than the junior teachers. And I guess a lot of senior people who might be sitting in this workshop, they might agree with this fact. Junior teachers would always come prepared and they would have a very planned class. They would know what to be delivered in the class, and they would end up delivering that in the class. Most of the senior teachers, because they have taken so many lectures physically, they take it very lightly. They say, okay, nobody has ever questioned me in my physical lectures. This is just online. There's nothing wrong in it. I don't have to prepare. Even after 20 years of teaching, if I have to prepare, then what is the use of being a teacher? I have heard this from many of the senior teachers. The problem is, the more senior, teaching is a profession in which the more senior you get, the more outdated you become. Okay, so if there is a junior teacher who has done that teacher has done the post graduation 5 years, and you have done your 5 years back, and you have done your post graduation 20 years back, then you are outdated. All right, so it's you who has to plan your class properly. It's you who has to read properly and then to deliver the lectures. Now this problem with the online planning classes is that virtual students, even if they are the same, the class, which is the same class, but their characteristic will change when they are attending virtually. Okay, class in what happens in class is sometimes the students do not make mischiefs just because they are scared of you, or just because they are scared of the consequences. All right, so what happens is, in online classes, that fear is not there, and that's why their behavior changes. Second, because they are on the home. Mostly in online classes, the students are at their home. They are in their comfort zones. Right? They are sitting in their lousy sofas. And that's why what happens is that attentiveness goes. Are you getting it? So the more you are into your comfort zone, the more secure you feel and the more lesser attentive you become. That's a fact. It's a psychological fact. So their virtual needs are very different from the physical students. So you need to understand your audience first, and then you have to plan your classes and understand one thing. If in a physical class, if I have planned that I am going to cover this 7 topics, for example, you need to understand that if in 70 minutes of physical class, if I am able to cover 7 topics, then in a 70 minutes of online classes, I would not be able to complete more than 3 topics. So plan your class that way, in that particular manner. It always reduces your productivity by 50% because of the technical glitches that are going to happen. There can never be an online class, whether you take it in India or USA or on the moon, which might not have a technical problem. It would always have a lesser or more, that's a different story, but there would always be a technical error. So it's a Murphy's law. Murphy's law says that if something has a probability of going to get wrong, it will go wrong. That is a Murphy's law, and that actually applies in online education. So always plan that way. You can never plan your online class the way you plan your physical class. The second thing is, this is the most important point. You need to build a rapport with your students. Your students should consider you as a rock star. Now, this is where my first example would come into picture. When I had said that example that Nawazuddin Siddiqui has occupied a brain space in my friend's brain, that is because of the rapport that this person has created, even with one-way communication. So we are lucky enough that we can have at least 2-way communication with our students, and we need to build a rapport. Now, how can we build a rapport? Gone are the days when when we used to order the students and the students used to do it. That doesn't happen now. It doesn't happen. The students would say, okay, if you want to teach, teach, otherwise Google is always there. Google never scolds us and still teaches us a lot of things. That's a fact. That's a fact. Then why would they attend your classes? They would attend your classes because you have a rapport with them. Now, I'll give you my example, how I build a rapport with my students. And this again is not a one-time activity, it's a long-term activity. How I build rapport with my students? In my social network, whenever a student gives me a follow request or something, I always accept it. I never feel that, oh, he's or she is a student and how could she follow me on Instagram or how could she follow me on Facebook? No, let them follow. Let them follow. Okay. I always have 2 social accounts. I have 2 Instagrams. Everything is 2. Okay. One is for my personal use, in which I would never entertain any student. Okay. I would never even share it with my students. It's for me, my friends, my family, where I can be the real me. The other one is for everyone. So when a student marks a follow request, I accept it. Casually, I chat with them also, casually, not every time. All right, now the thing is, you need to maintain a very delicate balance between you and the student. In history or in past, people used to say that there has to be a distance between the teacher and the student. That used to be very true. That still holds true, but the distance should not be so much that the students do not feel connected to you in any sense. The student should not feel that you are Google. The student should feel that if I'll attend this person's class, I would get to learn something which Google can't teach me. All right. And that would happen when you will have a lot of talks, and by talks, I do not mean only teaching talks. You can talk on anything. All right. Here also, I'll give you an example. In my first assignment, when I was first assignment in academics in Jamnagar, Gujarat, I had a batch. There were 7-8 students. They were very notorious. However, they had very sharp minds, but they were very notorious. Now, I found out that they are cricket fans, and I am not a very good cricket fan. But every day in the lobbies, I used to talk to them on cricket. I actually used to do homework. In my home, I used to do homework about cricket, by who has made which record and whatever the things are. And next day, very casually on the lobbies, I used to talk to them. Believe me, their attendance record in my class was more than 75%. You getting it? So it happens, yeah. It happens that when the student gets emotionally attached to you, they would not feel like bunking your class. Even if it is getting boring, they would not feel like bunking your class. They would say, all right, yeah, sir is a nice guy. Let us just sit. Okay? Let them sit. At least they will learn something. Let them not be very active. Those, you will always find those bunch of students who would never be very active. Let them sit just because of the rapport that you have built with them. At least they would have some reception of whatever you have said in the class. I'm getting it? Now this is a, so I generally tell my faculties also that be a rock star for your students. Your students should always look up to you for everything. Are you getting it? That happens. This doesn't happen the other day, or you start it today and the next day everybody will get attached to you. No, it takes a long time, maybe a semester. All right. The third thing is, in every lecture, you give them reference points. Okay. Now the psychological rule says that the brain remembers and recollects an odd moment better than a normal moment. We would always remember an odd moment better. Oh, this was the day when this person fell from the stairs. We would always remember it. But we would not remember the 1,000 times when he climbed down the stairs properly. That we would not remember. One odd day he fell from the stairs, we would always remember it. Because it was not normal. It was an odd thing. So every class, I would always, it's my pedagogy basically. I would always keep cracking jokes in the class, which are very odd jokes. And people would laugh on it like anything, but that would give them a reference point. So in the next class, when I say, what did we learn in the last class? And they would first say, sir, that joke. Okay, yes, that was a nice joke. What did we do before that joke? And the 10 things that we have done before that joke, they might not remember those all those 10 things, but at least 1 or 2 they would recollect it. That yes, sir, you had taught this. That would give them a vent out. So what happens is, in online classes, that is happening right now in my own college also, that one after another, there would be at least 4 online classes every day. So the person who is taking the 4th one is always on the receiving end. The students would always have been fed up with the class, and they would be saying in their minds that this person should, shut his class so early so that we can pack our laptops now, enough. In that case, the 4th person has to do this odd moments more rather than the first person. And every class you need to give them some reference point, every class. It can be a joke, it can be an odd discussion which is not connected directly with your subject. It can be the discussion of what is happening today in the world, or what has happened today in our campus. That could also be a discussion. But you need to be, again, here you need to have a balance, that the discussion should remain as discussion and it should not turn into gossip. That is a very delicate balance that we need to create. So that is what is about giving reference points. The next one is you need to set up an adequate working environment. See, now what happens is mostly the faculties, when they are taking online classes, they are working from their home. And I always ask my faculties that we cannot make it compulsory for the students to have their camera on, but as a faculty you should always keep your camera on. Number one. Why? Imagine that you are not seeing anything and the voices are coming in your ears. The attentiveness reduces. Just audio will reduce the attentiveness. It has to be an audio and video. Visualing or visuals increases the attention by at least 10 to 15%. That's a fact. That is even taught in psychology, called as in visual perceptions and visual merchandise. Visuals always, increase your attentiveness. You take up, for example, you open Amazon.com, and if they have only written the name of the brands and not a photograph, will you still be interested in exploring more and more? No. The photographs increases your attention. Okay, and then it's first you will see the image, and then you will read what is written in that image. It's a fact. So first you cannot ask your students to have their cameras on, because that might eat up their data. But you as a teacher has to do this, first thing. Second, when you are having your camera on, even if you are working from your home, the atmosphere that is visible behind you and by you should not look very informal, should not look very lousy, and it should not look very lazy. So if you are sitting on a lousy sofa with your in your night dress and taking an online class, you yourself, your environment, your visuals are killing the attention of your students. Their basic nature is lazy. So if they see that my teacher itself is in shorts and t-shirts and has spread his legs on a sofa and eating something and taking an online class, done with it. The attention becomes zero. I'm getting it. So even if you are working at home, when you are taking your online class, present yourself the way you are presenting yourself in a physical class. The next one is discussions. Discussions are the most entertaining, number one, and interesting things in the class. And I would always say that if you have planned that I want to cover these 5 points in my class, and you see up the clock and you see that there are 10 minutes left and I'm still on the 4th point, do not rush to the 5th point. Let that 5th point to get completed the next day. Use those 10 minutes to initiate a discussion, because discussions will reinforce the learnings that the students have already learned. All right. Now, raising a discussion is a tricky job. You don't have to raise a discussion which can soon turn into debate, and that debate can soon turn into quarrel. You need to be a moderator while you are raising a discussion among the students. The easiest way is you raise a discussion with you being a party of the discussion, so that every communication will come to you and there would not be cross communication. The moment you will see a cross communication, step in and stop that cross communication. All right. So that's the first point that you need to understand while innovating a discussion in the class. Second thing that you have to see having a discussion in the class is You cannot just say that, okay, today we are going to have a discussion, so start discussing. Nobody is going to get interested. Why would a student get interested? In any case, he is going to get attendance because that student has attended your class. There is no incentive for him to take a part in discussion. You need to create an intrinsic motivation in that student to automatically take part in discussion. All right. So let's take an example. With the same example that I've given you, that I had some notorious students who were very, they were very interested in cricket. So one day when I was teaching strategic management, which is an actually heavy subject in MBA, strategic management, and in that lecture, I was teaching the market strategies. That means how to enter into markets. So you have scheming strategy, you have penetration. There are many heavy words on that. So what I said was, while I was teaching and I saw that those boys are actually sitting, and I said, I wonder what kind of a strategy IPL is using in Indian markets nowadays. So one of them said, sir, they are using the way you have taught, they are using penetration strategy. The other one said, no, sir, that can never be penetration strategy. They are using a scheming strategy. And I said, wait, let's talk on this. So what's your point? And he said, sir, scheming strategy. So before the other person was able to counter him, I stopped in and I said, tell me how scheming. And I stepped into that discussion. Those 5-7 boys started talking, and cricket happens to be a common religion of a lot of people in India. So a lot of other students started stepping in, and I soon took the position of a moderator, and the discussion went very well. Half of the lecture went into the discussion, and all the 4 important strategic management strategies were very clear to the class. So this is how we stimulate a discussion. Am I, something wrong happened, Gokul sir? Hello? Are you able to see the slides or not?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. So I was going on this. So this is how discussion. Now, again, this is what we can do in physical classes. Okay. Now, how to raise a discussion in an online class? Raise a discussion in an online class by having a energizer activity. Now, how can we have an energizer activity online? That would come later after maybe 1 or 2 slides. Okay. The next one is be a storyteller. The students, we still suffer. I mean, in India, even after so much of educational institutes and so much hype of education nowadays in India, and a lot of students enrolling for graduations and higher masters, still we have that belief that a teacher is a medium of instruction. A teacher is often called as an instructor. That's not the right way to define a teacher. A teacher has to be a storyteller. A teacher has to start a session by saying, a lot of teachers start a session by saying that, okay, students, today we are going to learn something on consumer behavior and marketing strategies. Now, just listening to this name, consumer behavior and marketing strategies, it sounds so boring. So why would a student be interested on investing 70 minutes on this? So instead of starting the session in this particular fashion, we can start the session by saying that, students, today what we are going to do is, I'm going to tell you a story of how Coca-Cola entered into the Indian markets and killed the local competitions. And then you start the entire narration. I bet the attention would be more than the way you have started by saying that, okay, we will study how consumers behave in a market. Instead of that, give a kind of a story to them and then relate it to the subject, it always works. In fact, I've written a paper on this, that the impact of storytelling teaching method in an international conference, which actually was chosen as the best paper. And most of the times, the teachers who are teaching in smaller grades, the nursery teachers, the kindergarten teachers, they are masters in this. They do it very well. And if you see the kids, the kindergarten kids, the first standard, the first graders, the second graders, they generally love their teachers. They generally love their teachers. They always talk about their teachers at home also. Today my teacher said this, today my teacher. What happens to them when they go into doing a master's course? You would hardly hear a master degree student going to his home and talking to his parents saying that today my teacher told me this. Why not? Because we teachers have created this gap. We always feel that a storytelling is for nursery students. Storytelling is for first graders. For MBA, it's a serious education. Education can never be serious. Education is fun. You're getting it? If as a teacher yourself you are saying that education is very serious, then why would somebody be interested in something which is very serious? We never like serious things. We always like fun, isn't it? So whenever we want to refresh our minds, what do? We watch TV, we watch movies, we go to a theme park. Why? Because it is fun. We need to have a paradigm shift here, that education is not serious. Whether it is a medical education or MBA education or a nursery education, education can never be serious. Believe it, and then become a storyteller to your student. Students would love you. Students would love your class. They would in fact wait for your class to happen. You're getting it? But for this, you need to have excessive reading. To tell a story to your own kid, every day a new story to your own kid itself is a challenge. Those people who are parents who have joined in this workshop, they would agree to this, that if you have a kid at your home and telling a story to the kid every day is a challenge, then think that you are going to tell a story to 40 kids every day or 60 kids every day. It is a big challenge. You need to have a lot of reading. You need to have a lot of, nowadays though, you can get access to a very good documentaries on YouTube also. There are some channels which provide a very nice documentaries on many things. Watch it. And I'm sure most of your students who are using YouTube would never be watching those documentaries. And then narrate those documentaries as a story to your students, and they would feel like, wow, this person is actually giving us something which is not in the textbooks, and I need to attend his classes or her classes. This is pedagogy was very fruitful in past. It is still very fruitful. If you remember our old Gurukul system, the Vedic system of teaching, it used to be storytelling. It used to be storytelling. This is what in Ramayana, Uttarardha Ramayana, the kids of Sri Ram, Love and Kush, they were told a story about Ram, who was Ram, and how Ramayana happened and who was Ravan. It was a story. Are you getting it? So basically, or if we even talk about Mahabharata, the art of entering into Lord Krishna had given a case study narration to Abhimanyu of how to enter into the enemy's territory and the art of fighting under the enemy's territory. And Abhimanyu learned it in the womb. The stories were told by Lord Krishna to Subhadra, and Abhimanyu was in the womb of Subhadra. So storytelling is the most powerful weapon of teaching, or I would not say a weapon, but it's a powerful tool of teaching. But it requires a lot of skills. It requires a lot of preparations. So we need to prepare ourselves on that. Now coming to retraining on engagement, how to engage our students. The students' engagement is always an issue, whether it is a physical education or a virtual education. Teachers should be presentable, they should be impressive and charismatic. Energizers actually will help you, and icebreakers would help you in engaging the students. I have given some examples. I don't know, a lot of you might be using it, but there is a very good icebreaker called as one truth and a lie. What happens in this is, when you start your class and you know that the energy level today in the class is very less in the beginning itself, you give them an activity that everybody would the other one has to be a lie. The other students, when one person is speaking, the other students have to guess which one is the truth and which one is a lie. This activity actually, there is no winner or a loser in this activity, but it sparks up discussion in the class and the energy rebuilds in the class. The second, which I generally have recently started using in my online classes whenever I take an online session, what I do is, I ask my students that today I'm going to explain you characteristics of an object which is lying near me. I would not name the object, but you have to tell me, you have to guess which object is that. So I'll start, for example, I'll say that that object is a rectangular shaped objective. That is the first clue. So students would come up saying that, sir, is it a remote control? Is it this? Is it that? And I would say, no. Let me give you another clue. The another clue is every time when I touch it, it glows. Then suddenly the student, a sharp student would say, sir, rectangular shape, and whenever you touch it, it glows. Okay, it has to be a cell phone. All right. So this is just an example. So this is called as a guess the object. Very kiddish, but it actually works. It actually works with my MBA students also. All right. So we should not shut that idea of having this activity saying that it's a very kiddish idea. No, it's not a kiddish idea. It actually involves the student in the session. Then let's say energizers. Whenever you feel that you have taken around 15-20 minutes of your session and the participation is gloomy, the participation is not coming up, stop it and stop your session and have a quick energizer. Some of the energizers that these two are my favorites. The Tom and Jerry game. This is a beautiful energizer. What happens over here is, I could have it right now. I mean, those people who are coordinating, can you yourself unmute yourself? 3-4 people, the coordinators.
Yes, sir. I'm Amma Salma, sir. Here.
Okay. Another.
Yes, sir. I'm here. Gokul is here. And can we have one or two others from?
I need at least 5.
Can one or two participants, can you quickly unmute and introduce yourself?
Okay, one of my faculty has joined. Can I ask him?
Definitely.
Good evening, sir.
Yes, sir.
Hello, Kosha ma'am, are you there? Or Abhishek sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Kosha ma'am is here, sir.
Okay, Abhishek sir, can you unmute yourself? Okay. So, do we have 5 people? Can I get an attendance of yes?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, quickly, what I need to do, or what you guys need to do is, one of you have to start saying numbers. Like you have to start saying by 1. Okay. The next one would say 2. The third one would say 3, 4, 5. Again, the person who has said 1 would come up with 6, whatever. Depends on the number of people that we have. Every time when we hear number three is not to be spoken. Instead of speaking number three, you have to speak Tom. Okay, so 1, 2, Tom. 4, 5, 6. Instead of 7, you need to speak Jerry. Okay, so let's say that there is a number called 13.
Okay.
Okay, for example, there is a number called 13. Okay, then you need to say 1 Tom, because it is 1 and 3, and you are not allowed to speak 3. Instead of 3, you have to say Tom. Instead of 7, you have to say Jerry.
Jerry. One Jerry.
All right.
Yes.
Can we start? I'll start with 1 and then you can pick up. Okay.
Okay, sir.
All right. Let's start. 1.
2,
Tom.
Yeah.
4.
Come on. Come on. Fast.
5,
5.
There are 2 5s. You cannot have 2 5s. All right. I say 6.
Jerry.
Is the 8 one? In general, because people don't know each other, so they might have an issue. But what happens in your class, people actually, the students know each other. So what happens is you take 5 students who are good friends of each other, and you play this game among them with their videos on. So what happens is some or other person is going to make mistake in Tom or Jerry, and then you can give them a little punishment, and this energizes the entire class. One person makes mistake and other 59 people starts laughing. We are not interested in the laugh, but we are interested that those 59 people who laughed actually came back into the class mentally. Are you getting it? This is a very simple Tom and Jerry game. The other one is called as a Buddy Empire. Buddy Empire is actually to be played when you know that you are sitting in a class where the students are actually having a great amount of unity, and this game actually works with them. What happens is you ask 6 of them to have a pair of 2 who are actually good buddies of each other, and you ask one of them that you narrate that if your friend happens to be a business tycoon, then what kind of business he would be involved in. Okay, and that because they are good friends of each other, they would generally start narrating their friend's business as one of the most hilarious business. Right. Once I was having this activity in my class, and one of the group members said that, okay, sir, my friend is this. He is a very nice person, and if he would be a business tycoon, he would be in the business of. He would start a cafe which is called as a frustration cafe. And I said, what is frustration cafe? And he would say that he would start a cafe where he would invite people, and he would charge for the invitation, entry fee 500 rupees, and the person can come there and can abuse whomever he wants to abuse that he hates. And my friend will listen to all those abuse, and he would say, okay, now are you satisfied? The other person will get satisfied and will give 500 rupees to him. They're hilarious things. Now what happens is these kind of ideas will actually spark smiles and laughters in your class, and then you can again take your class back because you have caught the attention of your pupils. So these are some energizers that you can use in your classes. But again, they are always double-edged swords. That means if you do it very often, then it would turn into be something as a routine activity, and people would not be very interested. Once in a while, maybe once in a week, twice in a week, you may do it, and you create a kind of a need in your student. After having this twice or thrice, the students themselves will start asking for energizers. So this is something that you can do. This actually works with me. And the last thing that is something which is most important for all of us nowadays is reading. We need to read a lot, and not just of our subject. We need to understand that when I might be a teacher of consumer behavior, I might be a teacher of product and brand management, but my student, when he will go out in the corporate, the corporates just do not need a person who only knows consumer behavior or a brand manager. Corporate needs a complete package in a student. So if I am not expecting my student to be confined only to one subject, how can I, being as a teacher, be confined only to one subject? I need to read a lot. I need to need a lot of things about other subjects. I need to take information from the World Wide Web or from internet or from YouTube, from wherever I can take. Like I study a lot of history. One, because it's my interesting area. I study a lot of music. I even study chemistry. I am a commerce student. I never liked science when I was into school. However, my dad was a science teacher. But I never had an interest in science. But now I am developing an interest in science. I read a lot of chemistry. When I don't understand anything in chemistry, I have friends who are chemistry teachers. I talk to them casually. You never know which knowledge can be used as an example in your class. You never know it, right? When I was once, I'll give you an example. Once I was assigned, when I was an assistant professor, I was assigned a subject called management of industrial relations. Now this is a very boring subject in the field of HR, and you have a lot of laws to study in it. You have Industrial Disputes Act of 1947 and Factories Act of 1948 and so many of those. And I was reading Factories Act of 1948, and it was completely based on science. Factories Act of 1948, if you read it, if you're a commerce student, you would never understand anything. Completely based on science, okay, based on physics, based on chemistry, that these kind of solutions you have to keep in your factory. These kind of solutions are not allowed in the factory. This much of pollution is permissible. This much of carbon monoxide is not permissible, and so many stuff. Now, when I started reading it, I was wondering that if I am finding it so boring, being a commerce student and being a teacher, what would happen to my class when I'll teach Factories Act of 1948 to them? They are HR people. They would never like it. So what I did was, I started with a very famous incident of Bhopal gas tragedy that happened in India. And I took them, I became a storyteller, as I say. I took them on a narration of how that thing happened, what was the gas all about, what was the combination of the gas all about, and how that actually thing has happened. Just please excuse me, I have a little disturbance. Hello, I'm sorry. So what happened is, I took them to that entire story. This was the gas, this was the combination of that gas, this was the solution which had to be kept in order to preserve the gas, and that solution was not kept, and that's why this tragedy happened. And then I took them to the provisions, the laws, that this is why these laws are framed. So that's why I say that you never know which knowledge would come handy to you when you are taking that class. So you need to develop the habit of reading. If you yourself, now again, it's a thing that you have to take it on your own. If you, being a teacher, are not habituated to reading, then you cannot expect your student to be habituated to reading. So that is the last point that you need to train yourself on. That is, you need to read a lot. And by reading, I'm not saying only books. You can take knowledge from anywhere nowadays. So that is, again, the last point, that you need to have a lot of information with you. That would conclude my today's talk. If I have made a lot of errors, I have made a lot of mistakes, I'm very sorry for that. I apologize, but I hope a lot of things would have gone into your minds. Thank you so much. Over to you, Gokul sir.
Hello, Gokul.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, sir. Uh, so I think sir has given his details also. I'm just running through the chat box just to check if there are any questions, because we have
Yeah.
206 participants as of now. So participants, when I ran through this, I can find excellent feedback. Thank you so much for giving those feedback. And if you have any specific questions with regard to today's session, please type in your question here in the chat box so that we can take it up with Vyas sir. Any specific questions? Okay, there's a question here from Ashwita S. Shetty. The question is, please give some suggestion to do the accounts paper online. How do we do it effectively? So that's the question.
What is the question?
The question is, sir, please give us some suggestion on how to teach an accounts paper online effectively.
Account.
Yes.
Now that is a warm issue right now. Even my faculties are complaining. But what I give them an advice is, have a recorded session rather than a live session for accounts, or not even just accounts, but all practical subjects. Like some of us teach business statistics and business mathematics. Now they also have this complaint that sir, I cannot do it online, I cannot have it on Google Meet because I have to write along while I'm teaching. So I generally advise them that get into a class, or get into an environment which is resembling a class. Take a board, do it, record it in HD and share it. I guess right now I just have that answer to that.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. I hope that answers the question. Any other questions? Because your questions are equally important for us, so that thank you for those feedbacks. Any questions, please? Okay, there's a question here from KB Ravindra. If we
Yes.
talk about syllabus, the general notion among all, including teachers, is we are being bookish. How do we deal with this notion? Probably I'll reframe this question for you, sir. What it says is the students have a feel that we are very much syllabus oriented when we talk about things. So how do we break that notion and tell them that no, we are not restricted to syllabus as teachers, we are beyond that? So how do we break that perception or that notion?
I guess I have answered it in my discussion itself. I said that you need to have a lot of information on almost every topic with you. I think I have given that example that I was not a very good cricket fan, and I went into doing homework on cricket, and then I started discussing it with those students, and they never complained that I was bookish. Are you getting it? We, in order to break that notion of being a bookish person, we actually need to come out from the books, and we need to start discussing something which is not from the book in the class.
Perfect. I hope that answers the question. Some questions we are skipping because they are asking which are the platforms which are available where the student and the teacher can present together. But probably that is not the area of discussion today. So, yes, sir, if you want to answer that, I don't mind. But
what is the question?
the question is there any platform where a student and a teacher could present together a session? So
I guess WebEx allows it. I'm not very sure, but
Okay.
but that actually kills it. When the student and the teacher both can present together, we need to be very assured that the students are reliable, because you never know what they would share.
True, sir.
And then they could pull out a mockery of yourself. So it's a dangerous territory. I would not advise people to loiter around that territory.
Perfect. One question on IFRS. How to teach IFRS subject online, because one format itself takes 1 hour of a regular class.
True, and that's why I said even for the accounts, that is the same thing. One final account sum would take more than 70 minutes. So you need to have it recorded, pre-recorded, and maybe break it into the pieces.
Perfect, sir. One question from, let me read out this question. Online teaching is something which is mandated for every education institution, but true or bright students find it difficult to show energy in online class as they are associated or used to with offline classes. So how do we reduce their resistance level for online classes, if at all they have?
Only one thing: make your sessions interesting. Use a lot of activities, use a lot of energizers, and have a rapport with them. These are the only solutions. Otherwise, students are not going to come.
Perfect, sir. I hope that's.
And it's not an issue of the screen time. You know, a lot of people say that students' screen time increases a lot with online session. It's not so. See, my kid is 3 years old, and she spends around 45 minutes watching nursery rhymes on YouTube. So it's never a question that students get bored on screen. It's not that. Only thing is, if I want to engage my student on my screen rather than a YouTube screen, then my session has to be more interesting than the YouTube video. That's it.
Perfect, sir. Perfect. Well answered. So just one more question I could find here. Sir, you repeatedly said about unthinking. Why is there so much stress on unthinking? That is what is the question.
No, I never said about unthinking. I said about unlearning.
Okay.
Unlearning is important because certain beliefs, certain things that we have learned might not have any relevance in the current times, in the current era where you are actually delivering your session or when you are actually working. So I might have learned something in my childhood which might be very interesting at that time, which might even be fruitful at that time, but right now if it is not relevant, then unnecessarily I should not carry it in my mind. I'll again give you an example over here. Is when I was a child, there was a rule in Gujarat government that every bicycle has to have a dynamo headlight on it. Okay, and the people used to know what is a dynamo, how it works, how it produces light. Okay, now do I need to know what is a dynamo? Because every mobile phone has a flashlight. I just have to click a switch and the flashlight open, starts on, and I don't have to worry about having a rotation and creating electricity using a dynamo battery. That's not needed now. Then why should I bother, and why should I invest my amount of brain on knowing what is dynamo? Instead, I should unlearn and learn something new on that space.
Perfect, sir. I think the questions are answered here. Thank you so much. And since sir has already shared his number, so any questions you could take it up with him over email. So thank you so much, sir, for kind of giving us a very practical insight on reskilling and retraining. So I think that's the you started off with that definition as such. So a couple of you are asking about the feedback forms. Don't worry, those things will be taken care by the organizing team. Don't worry about it. And whatever the recording is also on. So by end of day today, the recording will also be in YouTube. Okay, so with that, I'm happy to say that our beloved principal, Dr. Anil Kumar, is also here along with us. He has just come yesterday. He was there to give the opening remarks and wished us all the best. And today he is here to give us the to address us on the concluding day, that is day 2. Good evening, sir. Welcome to session, sir.
Good evening, Gokul.
Good evening, sir. Sir, over to you, sir, for the closing remarks.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Gokul.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. First of all, I would like to thank the very eminent resource person, Dr. Nirav Vyas. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
On behalf of the SSMRV College, which is one of the colleges which is governed by RV institutions, I think very popular institution, runs about 22 institutions. And that too, we are very happy to connect with you. You are in Gujarat, but we are in Bangalore. I think this is a real opportunity for all of us during this time to connect with you through online. I think that is one thing I am very happy. now it is not just restricted to one location. We can connect all over the world. I think this is an example, and I'm happy that there are more than 207 people have connected. I think that shows your credibility and your popularity in conducting this particular domain, and also the kind of response we are getting for the SSM RV College, Shivananda Sharma Memorial RV College, over a period of time, maybe from past 3-4 months. We have been conducting a lot of programs, but in all the programs we find more than 200, 250, 300 people participating. So it's really gives a lot of happiness and satisfaction for us that it is reaching right people, and it is helping in one way or the other. And that way, I'm once again now to Dr. Nirav Vyas for accepting and doing an excellent job. I was just listening for some time, and reskilling, of course, is inevitable today, and we need to go ahead. And this kind of a situation will really teach us and how to go forward. And as you said just now, unlearn and relearn. I think these are the two things which is need of the hour actually. And of course, the resource person has communicated so well. I think I was listening to some of the question and answers. I think the participants must be very happy with this webinar and also the question and answer hour. And also I would like to thank the entire team of our study circle coordinators. I think this is a unique program, a unique we can say club or circle. We have made this for knowledge sharing of faculty members. We invite faculty members and other experts in this on this platform, and we share the latest developments in the field of commerce and management and any subject, and that's the reason we call our SSM RV College is one of the knowledge destination. Anytime, any kind of such programs, feel free. We are ready to organize programs, even in future, even after COVID-19. It is not that these kind of programs should happen only during this time, and we are ready to host any of these kind of programs. We have been organizing international conferences and seminars, and a lot of such programs. We have a PG and research center also. So feel free. We are ready to associate with any one of you, even in the participants would like to coordinate with us, associate with us, and even I would request Dr. Nirav Vyas also. You can, if you have any other topic to be discussed and to be shared among the participants, I think we can have one more such programs. We are very happy to have you even in the future. And I also appreciate the entire team of our coordinator, that is Professor Umesh Salma, Dr. Nagaraj, and of course Professor Gokul, and for taking a lot of effort in organizing this particular program. And once again, I thank all the participants who were, I think, very patient for last 2 days, yesterday and today, and very active in. By seeing the questions itself, we can know that their participation is very active. And I will once again thank on behalf of SSM RV College and RV institutions, and on my behalf, all the participants. And see you once again in the next webinar. Thank you so much. Thank you. Over to Gokul.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for those words of encouragement, and I am sure the participants are also enriched with both the days of session and on two related topics. Now, before I hand it over for a formal vote of thanks, I would like to tell our participants and of course to Vyas sir that we have a very active social media. So I will also send this link to our WhatsApp group. So we have our website ssmrv.edu.in. So whatever the events which happen there, you can see that upcoming events are there, so that you could just keep seeing that any events which happens at least a week before, we will update it in those upcoming events. We have a YouTube channel where any events which happens, we record it and upload it. So in case you miss the program, you always have a chance to kind of connect with us. And please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, because it's very important for to kind of get connected. Then we have a very active Facebook page and Instagram and LinkedIn. So basically, whatever on the social media platform, I think we have kind of we keep ourselves active. So please do connect with us online and offline. With this, I think my role as I always say, as a Sutradhar ends here. So I hand over the session to Ms. Bharati, Assistant Professor, Department of Commerce, to propose a formal vote of thanks. Over to you, Bharati.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Gokul, sir. Good evening, all. I am Bharti NS, Assistant Professor, Department of Commerce. I regard it as an honor and privilege to extend vote of thanks on this momentous occasion. On behalf of the SSMRV College, principal, organizing team, and on my own behalf, I thank our resource person, Dr. Neerav Vyas, for making excellent presentation and making the session interesting, activity-based, and thoughtful. Thank you, sir, for sharing your insights on learn, unlearn, and relearn with us. Your rephrasing of Upanishads, certain aspects were really interesting and informative. Thank you so much, sir, for being connected with SSMRV College and the family. I would like to express our profound gratitude to our principal, Dr. S. Anil Kumar, for his consistent encouragement and support. I thank our head of the department, IQAC coordinator, Dr. M.S. Nagaraj, for his moral support and guidance. I also thank the coordinator of the event, Mrs. Ume Selma, Assistant Professor, Department of Commerce. I extend my thanks to organizing team, staff, and all the teaching fraternity for being present in the webinar. Thank you, one and all. Have a nice evening.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you once again, all participants.
Thank you so much. Good. Yeah.
Yes.
Sir, and the feedback form and other things would be sent. So once again, I request, I thank all the participants for being part of it. So you will get notification about our next program very soon. Thank you so much. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.